Hello and welcome. I'm Nick Hennigan, back in the garden again. Yesterday's episode was very short. Why not? But thank you again for the very positive comments that I've had about this. Maybe now's the right time to do it. It's also been suggested that you can follow the YouTube channel. I'm not sure why, but anyway, if you click the link to subscribe, that's the one. I gather that if it all works out well, we might be able to get a few bob out of it. Not quite sure how that's going to go, but anyway, if you could subscribe, that would be nice. And thank you, Joe, for reminding me that I should ask people. So we continue. This is chapter 5 of The Making of a Ghost of a Chance, or How to Make a Crisis Out of a Drama, The Making of Maverick Theatre, a journal, a stream of consciousness that I wrote back in 1997, and has done quite well critically, I'm pleased to say. It is available as a book, but I'll tell you about that later. Tuesday, the 6th of May, 1997. Was the press night, same time next year. I go to bed. I wake up. I next rise on the 11th of May. 11th of May 1997. John Slater is sulking a bit today. The conversation goes something like this. Slater: Nick, you know we're doing this theatre thing for virtually no money. Me: but yeah, I know, but it will get better eventually, you know. I'm really hoping that we'll... No, says Slater. It's not the money so much. I don't mind that, I understand. But why do you have to programme a production when the bloody Monaco Grand Prix is on? I make some weak comment about how little interest there is in Formula One since Frank Williams did a Claudius on Damon Hill. But by this time, I'm talking to thin air. Slater is off, single-handedly moving 3 tons of props, or something that he does. I realise that John's not talking about the negative effect on audiences for us putting a show on a Sunday. It's very unusual. No one else does Sunday shows at this point in time, although maybe it'll come later. But John likes Grand Prix racing, but loves the Monaco Grand Prix. He's walked around the whole circuit on foot. Twice. We have to tiptoe around the whole event since we started Sunday matinees. No one, cast, technical or front of house, is allowed to even comment on the race until John's rushed home after the show to see the event on his video. John's worked incredibly hard for Maverick for the past 14 months with barely a moan. But I think, should anyone so much as whisper Schumacher during a race meeting, he'll leave us there and then. It's one of the problems of small-scale, low-budget theatre loves. Of course, we've tried to play to John's one foible by buying him a roof rack for his car. But it did no good, particularly as it means he has to load tons of props and stuff on it. Oh, and I can't remember who won the Monaco Grand Prix, but I think John Slater would be able to tell you. 13th of May, 1997. Feeling good today. Oh, yes. And the reason? A ghost of a chance. After nearly 2 years of constantly doing audience figures, organising people and dates, writing funding submissions, I finally, today, returned to what I got into this mess for. A bit of the old art, loves. Now, I actually wrote Ghost of a Chance about 2 years ago. And ironically, originally I should say, it was going to be a small-scale version of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Hence the names Bob Cratchit, and Tim, as in Tiny Tim, in Ghost. Having written a one-man version of Henry V, one of Shakespeare's biggest plays, I reckoned I could do something with the Dickens classic. I wanted a family Christmas show to put on at the Billesley pub, partly because we acquired a reputation for doing adult grown-up plays, and as the whole ethos of Maverick Theatre is based on increasing access to theatre, I wanted something that children would enjoy so we could sort of get them into the habit of coming to see the theatre. As a boy, I used to read a junior version of A Christmas Carol every year before Christmas. I timed myself so that I read the last page on Christmas Eve. I wanted to try and do something similar, capture some of that magic on stage. So I actually sat down at the computer and typed the rough opening speech for Tim. It's not in Ghost of a Chance now, although it was only changed last week when I decided to make the play less time-specific, i.e. not a Christmas show, and with John Adams' input. But if you're interested, this is how the start originally went. Second draft, August 1996. The kitchen of a house. The lights go down. Silence. Then slowly, a door into the kitchen opens, seemingly without assistance. Lights come up behind the door and there is a small figure standing there, silhouetted. If it's not too corny, maybe it's a bit foggy to enhance the lights. Underscore music starts. a voice speaks. Tim. Now, how do we reconcile Christmas with a computer? How many megabytes does it take to conjure up in modern minds the time of long ago crisp snows, when picture postcard, frozen scenes, a coach and horses, bridles bustling, and black hooves tamping unpolluted snow? Yule logs crackle in warm bricked hearths, matronly mothers ooze gingerbread fancies to young, wide-scrubbed faces with enthusiastic glow. Emotional scenes from a long time ago. And me? My name's Tim. You know me, you know you do. Most of you, I think, grew up with me. Tiny Tim with crooked bones, angelic face and caring home, a life in danger, hanging on a boss's whim for Dad Bob Cratchit's youngest son. Yet all that is legend, all that is past, a Dickensian fiction with a message to last. Ebenezer Scrooge just doesn't exist, along with a million things that I could list. He smiles, but won't, you'll be glad to know. So, what are we all doing here? Desperately seeking some Christmas cheer, clapping hands 'cause it's that time of year. Well, we are. For in spite of megabytes and motorbikes and Mogadon and pop chart songs, although we're processed and packaged, radiated and ravaged, games showed and open-toed, the little child stays in us all. The open hearths and open hearts, although commercialised to death, stay close to us all. Victorian Christmas and fluffy white naivety are just below our radio wave ravaged exteriors. Bit random, but as an idea, I thought so far so good. And then suddenly, something strange happened. I have no idea why, but suddenly Tiny Tim became the Tim we now have, and Bob Cratchit became an out-of-work modern man. I had no idea where I was going or what direction the story was going to take. I don't know, or I didn't know how it would finish or what the characters were going to do. Common practice dictates that plays need to be structured and worked out, and the dialogue comes last if you're Alan Ayckbourn. But I kind of did away with common practice. Ghost of a Chance just happened. I hadn't intended to write it, but something emotionally made me do it this way. It just happened. That was 2 years ago. It only got to the stage because I sent a copy to John Adams. I'd met John Adams the year before. He was, and still is, one of my heroes. He was one of the founding fathers of the Payne's Plough Theatre Company, a new writing company. He was artistic director of Birmingham Rep and had turned the place round during his tenure there. He'd brought Kenneth Branagh and his Renaissance Theatre Company to Birmingham Rep for their highly acclaimed first season. He'd had the sense to offer Ken an associate directorship of the Rep, but Ken Branagh had other ambitions. I'd initially approached John about directing my first play, Henry V, Lion of England, for a run in Stratford-upon-Avon in Warwickshire, in one of the theatres there. I'd sent him the script and the reviews from Edinburgh, the Edinburgh Festival, and we had a meeting. The conversation went something like this. "I like the play very much and would love to do it," said John. "Oh, good," said I, beaming with a mix of pride and awe that I was having a meeting with a proper theatre director. Just one problem," John continued. "Oh, yes, here it comes," I thought. Too good to be true. "Well, I don't want to talk myself out of a job," he said, "but I think I would have to do something very special indeed to create a piece that would be more successful than it already is. I've read the reviews. Your first director obviously did a very good job. I really think you should stick with them. Who directed it before?" "Oh, blimey. I did." The meeting finished and I directed Michael Shaw in Henry V, Lion of England at Stratford-upon-Avon. But I remembered and respected John's honesty, and on a whim, a year later, I invited him to see Play It Again, Sam, at the Billesley pub. With the invite, I sent a first draft of A Ghost of a Chance. The day John was due to see Play It Again, Sam, he phoned me. "Nick, it's John Adams here." I can't remember for sure, but I think I did a little curtsy. "I'm just calling to say I'm still coming to see the show, but I had to phone you. I was going to flick through Ghost of a Chance because I knew I'd see you tonight, but I haven't flicked through it. I normally just read a few pages at the start, middle and end, but when I started this play I was grabbed and I had to read it all at one sitting. It's a very, very good play and I would be more than happy to do it if you want a production. I'm good with new plays. I also think it will have a commercial life. Well done. Make sure your agent sends it to the Stratford East Theatre." I mumbled some thanks and floated through the rest of the day. Praise from heroes is something to be treasured. I then, of course, had to try and fund it and spent months doing applications for grants. Even with just 2 people and a voice, it would be more expensive to put on than we could afford. Then Helen Halls, a local journalist from the weekly news group at Post and Mail House, sent me a press release about an award Guinness gave for pub theatre. Then I heard about the lottery Arts for Everyone grant. I ended up making 4 applications, including Birmingham City Council Arts and West Midlands Arts. I expected to get none, which is what had happened since I'd started pub theatre in Birmingham, and I shelved the copy of Ghost of a Chance. We got all 4 awards. I took Ghost down from the shelf again. All we needed now was someone to play the main character of Bob. But in the meantime, my buoyant mood continues because things are happening artistically. I have a boy. His name is John. He's 14 but looks around 12, and he's lovely. Now, I say he's lovely because he is. His ma and pa can be very proud of him. I feel a bit strange working with a child, albeit a mature one. I think I'm being far too twitchy, having spent 4 years in London in social work, looking after kids with very considerable problems. But that was nearly 20 years ago, and I'm used to looking at grown-up actors and commenting on their looks and ability and asking them to do things and feel things, but it feels a bit strange with a boy. Perhaps it's just the times we live in, or perhaps it's just I'm a flipping nutcake. Who knows? Anyway, I'd spotted John in a Stage 2 youth show, and I thought he had exactly the right sort of haunted look for the part of Tim in Ghost. Nothing wrong with that. Even though we'd have to audition for the part of Tim, it would be useful to see John present the character, useful for me as the writer. So I approached his youth leader, Scott, and we arranged for Scott and John to turn up for a quick read-through. The quick read-through became a potted version of War and Peace. I haven't directed a show for years, although I've hired lots of directors, on fairly poor money, by the way, but they were great. And my artistic hormones are telling me I've missed directing, which is one of the things I started doing in the early days. John, the boy, John's mum, met a friend downstairs at the Billsley pub, while the 3 of us, John, Scott and I, went upstairs to play around with a few scenes. I suppose my real guilt with John is the typical writer thing. Some of the scenes currently in Ghost of a Chance are a bit, horrible, adult, call them what you will. And the guilty bit comes because I've written them. I put them in the play because I hope it will affect an audience and scare them and horrify them. But with a new piece, you're constantly revaluing the work. I've also written a big part for a small boy who not only has to play a son, but a 1,000-year-old entity. Did I mention that? Yeah, that's a Ghost of a Chance. I think my real problem, though, is that I've forgotten how worldly wise a 14-year-old can be today, even one who looks younger than his years. So we had the slightly ridiculous situation where boy John eventually puts me at my ease. And for a first read-through, the chemistry with Scott and John was electric. It's always weird seeing another person bring to life a character that's only ever existed in your head. And apart from 1 or 2 clumsy lines, it was a very beneficial session, even though I got so carried away with the drama that I forgot that one of my principal actors was normally in bed around 9:30 p.m. It's done me good, though, and I begin attacking the second draft of the second act as soon as I get home. I finish at 5:45 in the morning. But as I've been putting my job off for over 12 months, I think I deserve the punishment. Oh, I still can't remember who won Monaco. I think it was Schumacher. He'd be no good for a Ghost of a Chance. He's too tall.